The truth has been revealed behind the Jake Walman trade in San Jose as Mike Grier continues to cook. Not only was it perfect asset management, we now have the full details on the pick received for San Jose, and it's honestly even more of a fleece than we thought. We got to dive into the pick, the player they got back, and a very interesting trend that seems to be developing for the San Jose Sharks and Mike Grier in terms of roster development. We got a bunch of stuff to get into on this episode of Sharks Digest, but a reminder, guys, to hit that subscribe button. A lot of you have hit the button. We're really appreciative of that, but still 60% of you haven't. Share it with your friends, family, any other Sharks fans. We got Sharks news all season long. Mark, let's dive right back into this now. We did a video yesterday breaking down the trade before it was official, but it is now official, so we got to go over the details and some other little interesting facts about it. But at the end of the day, it was Jake Walman for a 2026 first-round pick, conditional, but it will end up being a first-round pick no matter what, and forward Carl Berglund. Now, before we dive into the pick, let's just take a look at Carl Berglund. Look, it is what it is. He's a 25-year-old career minor league kind of guy. He was in the ECHL for most of last year. I don't expect him to make a huge impact, but look, Mark, at least we got another Lund. Like, I don't know, that's one of the trends that we're seeing here with the San Jose Sharks, and he's a bigger center. At the very least, he'll be a depth piece for the Barracuda, and honestly, I know the first-round pick's the big thing here, but I feel like sometimes AHL depth moves are overlooked, but for a franchise that's looking to establish a winning culture over the next few years, having good guys down in the A to create a winning culture for your younger guys coming into that system is never a bad thing.
And I mean, the biggest thing is looking at Berglund, he is a bigger body as well, 6'2", and we see with Giles coming from Florida, he was also a bigger body. So it seems like Mike Grier really wants to make the Barracuda a harder team to play against, a bigger body to work with in the AHL. Like you said, listen, this guy is not going to stand out completely when it comes to points in the AHL. He's never really played in the NHL minus a few prospect games. But the biggest thing is Mike Grier is going out to add bigger bodies to this team. And I think it shows that he wants to help continue to develop the guys on the Barracuda. And we see a lot of general managers around the league kind of not really forget about the A, but not focus on it too much. But Mike Grier seems like he really wants to work both systems. I don't know, Josh, do you think there's more of a trend of adding just the bigger frames to the Barracuda?
I mean, like Barracuda or even the Sharks, like we saw Vincent Desharnais, right? Like going and acquiring a guy like him, it is setting a precedent. And again, you got so many young guys. It's always good to have. Now, again, Berglund's not exactly, he doesn't have that rep of being, a super physical guy necessarily. Only 8 penalty minutes in 45 games this year. But again, like just people that make your team tougher to play against, that is very important, especially when you look at San Jose right now in the NHL and even some of their AHL guys. Like a lot of them are skilled guys who don't lay the body as much. Not everyone, but a lot of them. So I think that is like a little underrated aspect of this trade. Again, don't expect Berglund to ever really do anything. I think anyone that was expecting some kind of really good prospect along with a first round pick is a little, maybe a little off base, but hey, it's not bad anyway. But let's dive into the actual pick itself because this is very interesting. The pick that San Jose gets, by the way, there's no retention on this. In my video yesterday, I was thinking, look, they'd get a first if some team came in as a third party and retained. The Oilers are taking on the full salary. And if the pick is in the top 12 in 2026, the Oilers can transfer it to 2027 instead. Or if Edmonton trades that 2027 first, the Sharks get the 2026 first no matter what. So very interesting, like sort of top 12 protected, but the Sharks are getting what's probably going to be a decent first round pick in one of the next 2 drafts. Now, wherever the Oilers end up, who knows? Look, I'm just saying, adding Jake Walman, I like Jake Walman, Mark, but I know that's not the kind of guy that I think the Oilers were looking for. But what do you think about this in terms of the pick? Like, for taking on the full salary, I was honestly pleasantly surprised that this is the return for Jake Walman.
Yeah, I was not expecting a first round pick. And listen, like you said, Walman has been good for the Sharks. But I mean, a first round pick for this guy, it seems like a heist from Mike Grier going out, getting a Oilers first, which might not be a top first, but you're still getting a first nonetheless. And I mean, the biggest thing is, and I'm kind of pivot a bit with Ferraro being on the block, we talked about a first coming back from this guy. I think that just shoots the value up a little more, in my opinion, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Ferraro is like on a similar type of contract, and Ferraro brings more of that playoff style hockey, more of that defense. Look, am I crazy for saying like it would make more sense for the Oilers to have gone after Ferraro than Jake Walman? Like, I don't know. Look, but this is not an Oilers channel. We're talking about our boys, the Sharks, here right now. But absolutely, like, you know, I know not everyone's as high on Ferraro, but again, his value seems to be sky high right now. We're seeing a lot of trades going down, even like Anthony Beauvillier recently now being traded for a second round pick. That also has some implications on maybe a guy like Luke Cunnin. I don't know, right? So there's a lot of stuff going down now, Mark. But the biggest problem that I'm seeing is this decor. Yeah, you bring in a guy like Desharnais, but there's almost no players right now on defense, right? Like Jimmy Schultz coming in playing a game, which was really nice to see, but I don't know. Right now, the goalie or the defense situation is a bit sparse. Do you see them maybe taking on some kind of other contract? I know I mentioned that in the last video, but San Jose seems to be in a position where they can just take on bad contracts from contending teams to try and just get some more value, just like they did Walman, because honestly, that worked out better than we could have ever anticipated.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And listen, this defensive core does need to add people. Looking at Darnay's, that's a nice pickup, a big body that can play within the system, a bit of a leader for the group. He doesn't have a ton of NHL experience for being, 27 years old, but you're still getting a physical guy onto a group which is filled out with quite a few rookies on the back end. But I do like how you brought up that we've seen cap dumps before. I mean, looking at this quickly, I know you touched on it before. Seeing Walman picked up in the off season from Detroit, and they got a second round pick for absolutely nothing. You could almost look at this trade as, hey, Mike Grier got a first, a second, and a prospect for Walman, which is an absolute steal even more when looking at it. So going back to the defensive core, I could see Mike Grier going out, looking at teams and saying, hey, do you have a bad contract that's a year or two on the books? We'll take that on, give us a draft pick, and maybe even flip them again next deadline, like we've seen with Walman, in just under a year with the Sharks.
Yeah, and like taking a look at their draft capital now, like this is exactly what you want to see from a rebuilding team. Two firsts in 2025, now two firsts in 2026, a plethora of like a second round, fourth round picks. But the thing is, those mid to late round picks, like we've mentioned before on the show, is a place where, it is lacking a bit. Not that you necessarily need those in 26 and 27, but again, like getting some higher draft picks, whether a second, a third, even a fourth to take on certain contracts is, I think, a way that Mike Grier can go. Like this can kind of become his MO, right? Like there's some GMs, especially for rebuilding teams, that have made this a pattern, and I don't see why Mike Grier can't do that. So, especially heading into the offseason, like I mentioned as well, like the Sharks are going to have to hit the cap floor, Mark. I don't know whether that means there'll be another deal from here on out for the 3 hours here until the deadline. And even if not, we're talking in the offseason. The Sharks are going to have to make some moves to bring in a lot of salary. To me, it just seems like they're in an absolute prime position to do exactly that, to capitalize on other teams' bad contracts and see what they can do with them.
And that's the biggest thing. I feel like Mike Grier is going to be very active. I mean, with the Walman trade, he hasn't even spoken on that yet, so I'm guessing he's working the phones quite hard. But I do think it's going to be kind of a rough time to be a Sharks fan, but also a fun time. We're seeing this team add future assets, if it's first round picks, young guys to the team, people coming up from the AHL, and it's not even touching on the junior players. The Sharks team's going to be deadly, Josh, and I do think this draft and offseason going to have a big impact on especially deadline as well.
Can't wait to see it, honestly. Like, this draft is another thing we're going to be focusing on a lot on this channel as we head towards the end of the season. But for now, all we can do is talk about these trades. There might be more coming out right after this video. We'll keep you updated on everything, but that'll do it for this episode of Sharks Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. We got you up to date on all things Sharks. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Mark Pye. We'll catch you in the next one.